Welcome back, everyone. Thanks again for joining us on another episode of Topic UFO. As I said, tonight we're going to be speaking to a gentleman by the name of Greg Hayes, who is going to be with us from Australia. And he is an author, among other things that I'm sure he'll tell us about. And he has a book out right now called The Janus Memorandum. And it really caught my eye because he's got cream of the crop UFO cases in there as part of this fictional book. Very interesting. So without further ado, let's go ahead and bring him on. Mr. Hayes, are you out there, sir?
Yes, Rick, how are you?
Very good, very good. How is it down in Australia today?
It's a beautiful sunny autumn day today. Weather's perfect. It's short sleeves and shorts.
You know, I just did an interview with another Australian, and it seems like you guys always have good weather. Do you always have good weather?
I think we say in Queensland here, beautiful one day, perfect the next.
Oh, man. Well, I wish I could say the same. So Greg, your book, the Janus Memorandum, it is a fictional piece. What spurred you to write about UFOs or a subject that involves UFOs? Have you been into ufology for a long time, or is this something new for you?
I suppose it's something new for me. I mean, I think everyone's heard of the 1947 Roswell incident. I suppose that's probably the real holy grail for UFO followers. But I was watching a documentary one day on television, and it dealt with another incident, one that I never heard of before, and that was the Rendlesham incident back in 1980. And that really piqued my interest. That was the one, I suppose, that got me going with this particular book. And I saw that documentary and I thought, wow, there's a book in this. There's a lot of books out there about UFOs, but I don't think there's too many that have used a fictional genre and put the story out there in that respect. And
you're absolutely right. Those two cases, Roswell and the Rendlesham Forest, have got to be number 1 and 2, if not very close. Did that? When you saw the Rendlesham case, you said that it really kind of caught your eye. What was it about it, that particular case, that you feel was so remarkable?
Well, I think many of your viewers would be familiar with the Lieutenant Colonel Charles Holt audio tape, and I've heard that audio tape, and I've also seen the airmen who were interviewed at the time. And what really struck me is how one of them was put under hypnosis sometime later and asked to relate the events. And one of his answers that he gave when talking about the incident really got me going. But unfortunately, to tell you what that question was and what that answer was would be a real plot spoiler for the book.
Ah, okay, yes, we don't want to do that. Now, the book's been out, I think the publication date was May 14th, 2012, correct?
Yes, just coming up to my 1-year anniversary very shortly.
And from the reviews that I've seen, they've been all very positive. What has been the reaction as far as you're concerned? Have you liked the reaction that you've gotten?
I've been very encouraged, actually, because this is my first book that I've put out. And as a first-time author, you sort of are worried that whether you're going to make the mark or hit the grade. And so far, the reaction's been very positive and the sales have been quite good.
Excellent, excellent. Now, did I hear that you were going to be writing a sequel to it or a next chapter or something? Is that correct, too?
Currently working on the sequel now, which I'm calling the Janus Conspirators, and there's also plans for a third book, title unknown yet, but it will still incorporate the term Janus in there. And for many of your viewers who are not sure who Janus is a Roman god. from mythology. He's purported to be the guardian of secrets, the protector of doorways. In fact, the first month of the year is named in his honour, January.
I did not know that. You see, I learned something new every show. I swear, I learned something new every show. So for somebody that, you're not this long-time ufologist person,
No.
you see some TV shows, it gets your brain going, you decide to write this story. Now, did you have to do any research in regards to these cases?
Yes, lots of research. Thank God for Professor Google. He's outstanding in giving lots of information. I learnt so much. In fact, there are volumes of books there that could be really written in a fictional sense using those historical cases. I've taken mine back to 1947. I've also incorporated World War II with the development of radar, Foo Fighters that were observed by airmen from both sides during the war. And I've taken it right the way through to today.
That is great. I just think I have not had a chance to read it yet, but I want to, and it seems like it's going to be very, very interesting. Tell us a little bit more about yourself. I see in here that you race horses with your wife?
Yes, I do. Yes, we race horses here in Queensland. We do quite well. We also breed with some of one of the mares that we've raced in the last couple of seasons. Got a 3-year-old filly that's in work at the moment. Hopefully she was going to have a start in a couple of weeks' time, but we had a little setback there with an injury, but should be back on track for a start in July. It's one of the things that I suppose is our hobby.
Unbelievable. That's very, very unique. I've never known anybody that raced horses. So Greg, is there anything that in particular you would like people to know about your book? Anything that you want to get across to the viewers besides going by it?
It's the story of an Australian journalist by the name of Jason Caulfield who travels to England for his sister's wedding. And whilst he's there, he gets caught up in the Rendlesham conspiracy of 1980 through a girl that he meets. And it uses a lot of factual information. Anyone who's into ufology would pick up a number of the links there that are in the story with Rendlesham, Roswell, and some of the projects that the Americans were involved with after World War II, with things like Project Paperclip, with snatching the best of the German scientists and to take on board back to America. It involves Wright-Patterson Field, where there's some thought about a connection with alien technology being used perhaps there. Also with Area 51, all those sorts of things are based in there. And, I mean, even in Australia, we've got our own UFO Central, and that's a place called Wycliffe Wells. And if viewers can imagine a map of Australia, at the very centre of Australia, you'll find a place called Alice Springs, and nearby there is a US base called Pine Gap, run by the CIA. And it's maybe a little bit coincidental that Wycliffe Wells, just nearby, happens to be what we call UFO Central in Australia.
Is that right? I had not heard of that. Now, I remember a band back in the 80s that sang a song that talked about Alice Springs. Must have been some type of political protest song, I guess, because of what you're saying there. So let me ask you, have you yourself ever seen what you would refer to as a UFO?
No, I have not. My mind is open on the subject. One thing that really sort of gets me thinking, I suppose, is the proliferation of technology since, say, World War II, the end of World War II.
Right.
For many years, I don't think technology went all that far. We're still, for instance, using the internal combustion engine in motor cars. We have been since, the late 1800s. But look at technology in the last 40 years, say. Even with mobile phones now, touch screens and things like that. It's amazing. We all know who invented the light bulb and who invented the telephone and things like that. But who was it that invented the computer chip?
Right, right. I mean, if you ask the question, I'm sure the answer would come back as, somebody at Intel or somebody at IBM, but who really knows where that technology started?
That's right. That's what I was trying to look at through the book. And one of the premises in the book is, the military's after these UFOs, and the reason why they're after them is to cannibalize them for their technology.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I totally agree. There was, and the guy's name slips my mind, but he had come out, I guess back in the 80s or 90s, and said that the U.S. had cannibalized these flying saucers, and they got integrated circuits, they got fiber optics, they got night vision technology from the saucers as well. And I haven't seen anybody come back and prove that person wrong by, I'm sure if you took the time, could you not go back and link and try to find where this technology actually came from? Or do you think they've got it so muddled up in paperwork now that you would never be able to find out?
I'm sure they'll tell me who was the person who invented that computer chip or developed the computer chip. But I wonder about the basic design, the ideas. You can always put a name to it, but where did they get that idea from? Was it the light bulb in the head that just came on, or was it a blueprint put in front of them? Play around with this and see what you come up with. Back engineering.
Right. And I mean, there has been so many prolific advancements, like you say, in the last 40 years, just an explosion of technology. It does make one think, was that us that did?
That's the thing I'm thinking, and that's where I've linked the UFOs in the story in this piece of fictional work.
Wow.
And many of you, your viewers would be familiar with an organisation mythically referred to as Majestic or MJ12. Well, in this case, Majestic is Janus.
Ah, okay. Gotcha.
And they are protector of the secrets.
So how long did it take you to write this book?
It was a 2-year effort. I work as a teacher. I teach English and ancient history, and I have been teaching now for 36 years. So it was sort of like a part-time project. And the book was finished after 2 years, and it was a matter of trying to get it published, and that's another story in itself, trying to get a piece of work published. But I'm finding that the next book, the sequel, a lot easier because all my groundwork's already been set out. My characters are there, my setting's there, and there's just so much to draw on from the UFO community. And
you've learned the ropes a little bit as well, as far as publication ropes, right?
Yes, I have, yes. And if people say to you, what's the hardest thing, writing a book or getting it published, I'll tell you now, it's getting published.
I've got two questions I want to ask you. One thing that I often say to people that tell me they don't believe in UFOs and all this, I asked them, I said, well, have you actually researched the subject? Well, no, I've seen it, blah, blah. So I always tell them, I say, take a month, go out and investigate it, and then come back and tell me what you think. And I was just wondering, because you were not really into ufology before you decided to do this book. In order to do the book, you had to investigate. Did your personal beliefs regarding UFOs change in any way from before the book to after the book?
Look, you come across so much evidence and information. I'm sure there's also some disinformation involved in there as well. But when you look at things like Project Sign and Project Blue Book, all those sorts of things, maybe they were just PR jobs by the Air Force, keep things quiet. But when you have, politicians, police officers, military reports about UFOs, picking them up on radar, chasing them, it's a pretty hard thing to stop, isn't it? When you have so much out there now through the internet and through people recording things with really a TV camera on their phone these days.
Yep.
If you look on any sort of YouTube clip for a UFO sighting, you'll find one almost posted every day. Now, whether they're real accounts or not, I don't know, but there's just so much out there, it has to make you think.
Yeah, I mean, they say 95% are fake, 5% are unexplained, but when you're talking 100, 200,000, that's a pretty good number, 5% of that. So.
And I saw there was an interesting National Geographic survey that I came across some time back, stating that 38% of respondents in the US believe that there are UFOs, and still of that 10% who say that they've witnessed a UFO. That's a lot of people to say that, their thoughts, you can't just discount them so quickly, I don't think.
No, because we've got roughly 300 million people in the U.S. 10% of that have actually seen a UFO. Myself, Greg, I have not physically seen a UFO. I don't feel I need to. I would like to, but it doesn't change the way I feel. I just think that there is overwhelming evidence that something's going on. Whether they're...
You've only got to look at...
Go ahead.
Sorry, look at the popularity of things like the X-Files and E.T. when that came out, or Close Encounters of the Third Kind. These were really embraced by the public. And, I suppose public can be quite skeptical too, but it really has me thinking.
Yep, I agree. Here, since you've brought up the United States, here in the United States, we've seen a big increase in the amount of media, TV shows regarding aliens, UFOs, all that type of thing. I understand in Australia it's pretty much the same, correct? The whole idea of UFOs is getting much easier to talk about publicly.
Yeah, I would agree with you there. I think there's a lot of paranormal shows out there on TV and also in books now. Vampires, witches and warlocks, ghosts. And I think people aren't afraid to talk about these things as much today as they were perhaps, say, back in the 1950s or 60s when, if you broach the subject, you're probably seen as somewhat strange.
Yep. Yeah, they thought you had lost your marbles.
And perhaps that's the authorities want you to think too.
Well, listen, Greg, we're getting down here on time, so I have one more question that I would like to ask you before I ask you about your website and stuff. Theoretical question. If tomorrow morning a UFO landed on your front yard or your backyard or whatever and said, would you like to go for a ride? Would you go?
I don't know about the ride. Probably yes. Love to have a look inside that ship and just have a look at what is there and to be able to work some of those controls or instruments. Could you imagine the technology that would be on board?
I tell you, I've recently talked to several abductees, and the things they describe from being in these ships, it just blows your mind. I mean, it really does. I'd like to take a tour too, and I guess I'd have to feel very comfortable for the ride part.
Yeah, I don't know about the ride. It'd be almost like abseiling off the top of the building backwards. That sort of worries me a bit.
Yeah, I definitely want a round-trip ticket. That's for sure. So, Greg, where can people find you on the internet? I believe you do have a website, correct?
Sure. It's Greg Hayes, is one word, .webs.com. It can also be found on Amazon, who are my distributors. The book is available in paperback and also Kindle version. The Kindle version's $2.99, it's not even the price of a cup of coffee. And the paperback's $13.99.
Excellent. Excellent. Fantastic. Well, I'll get that information up. When is the next part of your book? The sequel.
I was hoping to have the sequel out by the end of this year, though at this point it could be a little bit awkward depending on how it goes with editing and cover design, those sorts of things. But looking for a release late this year.
Great. Excellent. Excellent. Well, I wish you the best of luck on both the books, and would stay in touch with you. And if by chance you do see a UFO, or if one lands in your backyard, you're going to let me know, right?
I will do, Rick.
Okay. All right. Greg Hayes, thanks so much for joining us tonight. I appreciate you taking the time out, and keep looking up.
Thank you, Rick. It was my pleasure.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.
The answer is to keep it. You'll believe it when you find something screaming across your mind. Green slime.
Book out right now called the Janus Memorandum, and it really caught my eye because he's got cream of the crop UFO cases in there as part of this fictional book. Very interesting. So without further ado, let's go ahead and bring him on. Mr. Hayes, are you out there, sir?
Yes, Rick, how are you? And here, beautiful one day, perfect the next.
Oh, man. Well, I wish I could say the same. So Greg, your book, the Janus Memorandum, it is a fictional piece. What spurred you to write about UFOs? Or very good. Where? How is it down in Australia today?
It's a beautiful sunny autumn day today. Weather's perfect. It's short sleeves and shorts.
You know, I just did an interview with another Australian, and it seems like you guys always have good weather. Do you always have good weather?
I think we say in Queensland.
Welcome back, everyone. Thanks again for joining us on another episode of Topic UFO. As I said, tonight we're going to be speaking to a gentleman by the name of Greg Hayes, who is going to be with us from Australia. And he is an author, among other things that I'm sure he'll tell us about. And he has a